Hi, it's Kevin here. This is the first video in the series regarding OOP concepts and terminology for VB. A lot of what we're going to be dealing with in this series of videos should sound pretty familiar because you have worked with some of these concepts and used a lot of this terminology in your C++ course or courses, currently in your C# course, and I know you're currently working with this in your Java course. I want to start first by thinking about, business logic and developing business logic. We've always kind of taken the approach up to this point where, your application has sort of user interface, and then there's logic behind that interface based on what the user does with that interface, either entering data or clicking buttons or selecting something from a list and that sort of thing. I want to start investigating this idea of multi-tier application design. Typically with multi-tier applications, you've got separate program functions, broken down into sort of that presentation tier or user interface, the business tier, any of the logic based on business rules, so things like calculations and business rule validation, and then of course the third layer, that database layer. Each one of these can be broken down into a number of different layers as well, and each one of these layers could have a number of different classes associated with it, or components or modules associated with it. We're going to be focusing mainly on the middle layer, the business class, in terms of developing a class or a module that contains all of those business rules and business validation rules and calculations. So logic that triggers in the business class may actually cause something to be elevated to that presentation layer that will require the user to deal with it in some form or another. Specifically here, I'm thinking of an example of a business rule validation. As you move forward in this course and you start thinking about multi-level design, ultimately the place we want to get to is at a point where all of these different components, the presentation tier and all of its associated classes, and the middle layer, the business logic and all of its associated classes, each one of those could actually be looked at in isolation, and in fact maybe even maintained in isolation. As we carry on in the next videos, I'm going to start off with the next one, a bit of a review on data types, and we'll take a look at business objects versus the use of structures.